Little. We'll get started because we do have a jam-packed schedule today. First things first, this meeting is being recorded. So if you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect now. We are also offering today's webinar with live Spanish translation. If you need to toggle between English and Spanish, that is at the bottom of your screen under the Zoom controls. And then some quick reminders, please keep your cameras off and mics muted unless you are presenting or asking a question during the designated periods. You are welcome to drop comments and questions into the chat at any time. And Bree Hennessy, who will be monitoring the chat, will be happy to connect you with resources, answer questions, or bring them to our attention to address as okay. And now I would like to introduce Lauren Derensberg from HRSA's Division of Transplantation to kick off today's webinar. Lauren.
Thank you so much, Marley, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Health and Resources and Services Administration's Donation Campaign webinar for National Minority Donor Awareness Month. We're so excited to have you join us today and hear our presentations about the exciting ways our campaign partners are using donation to diversify the donor registry. As Marley mentioned, I'm Lauren Derensberg, Lead Public Health Analyst with the Division of Transplantation in the Health Systems Bureau at HRSA. We're also joined by our Akoya team members, Marley Furman, Outgoing Project Manager for donation, Whitney Tipton, our Incoming Project Manager for donation, and Bree Hennessy, Communications Consultant. HRSA's Health Systems Bureau is our nation's unifying voice for organ, eye, and tissue donation. By creating a larger and more diverse donor pool, we can help people find matches for life-saving transplants. The donation campaign contributes to this goal by cultivating a workplace culture that's supportive of organ, eye, and tissue donation and encourages workplaces in all industries to sign up their employees and patrons as donors. Thank you all for making time in your busy schedules for today's webinar. In honor of this important observance, we know that there are many competing priorities, so we're glad that you have chosen to spend some time with us. We appreciate your ongoing support and involvement in donation. We're going to begin today's webinar by introducing a new team member from Akoya, Whitney Tipton. Then we'll share donation graphics and resources you can use in the coming months for observances like National Minority Donor Awareness Month and Hispanic Heritage Month. Next, we'll have Aisha Johnson give remarks on behalf of the Association for Multicultural Affairs in Transplantation, or AMAT. We'll also hear from Brett Milam at Life Center about how they're connecting with Spanish speakers about organ donation. And finally, we'll have Laura Lee Brown of MTF Biologics share how they have leveraged donation to educate the public about tissue donation. Now I'm going to hand things back over to Marley to begin today's presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. And thank you all for being here today. As Lauren said, my name is Marley, and it has been my genuine pleasure to support and project manage the donation campaign for the past 3 years and its mission to sign up new organ, eye, and tissue donors. I am transitioning into internal operations at Akoya, so it is unfortunately time for me to step back from the campaign. However, Whitney Tipton, PhD, will be taking over as the donation project manager. He's an expert in workplace communications and a champion for inclusivity. She is well primed to lead donation to continued success. I will remain a donation liaison through the end of the campaign year on September 30th. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me with questions or help with scorecards. I can be reached at my same email address, marley@akoyaonline.com. I will also continue to support donation in a strategic capacity after September, so you may still see me around. Now I'm going to turn off my camera and manage today's slides. Let's welcome Whitney to share donation resources and graphics you can use in the coming months. Whitney, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Marley. I'm thrilled to join the donation campaign team And we're so excited to share our 2024 suite of National Minority Donor Awareness Month graphics and animation to help our partners elevate our message. So last year, only 37% of the 63,000 multicultural patients on the national transplant waiting list received a life-saving organ transplant. So by prioritizing donor diversity, we can help increase the odds that donor matches will be found. When you share these graphics or any of the staggering waitlist statistics from our eBlast, you could reach and inspire people who may not have considered becoming an organ, eye, and tissue donor. The average American spends nearly 2.5 hours on social media every day, so sharing donation resources online is a great way to reach people and to increase awareness for the need of donors. After National Minority Donor Awareness Month, we'll celebrate American Workforce Appreciation during the first week of September. This suite of evergreen graphics can be shared throughout the campaign year to inspire new workplaces to join DoNation. As a reminder, workplaces of all industries and sizes are welcome to join the campaign. As always, if you or your partners are looking for a simple way to boost your scorecard points, remember you can earn 5 points for each graphic that you share and another 5 points for each platform they're shared on. So sharing a few graphics throughout your campaign year could boost you to a higher level of recognition. I also want to recommend some DoNation resources that can help support your workplace's campaign efforts. Our Diversifying DoNation Toolkit is an excellent diversity, equity, and inclusion resource that contains best practices, data points, and tools collected from organ donation organizations all across the country. If you're looking to build new connections in your community or refresh your campaign with new initiatives, this toolkit is available to inspire. You can find the toolkit and all of DoNation's campaign resources in the Outreach Materials Library. And we also want to announce the next issue of our Digging Into DoNation newsletter. This will be coming to your inboxes next month. This issue will feature resources from DoNation and HRSA, a workplace partner spotlight, and an interview with Laura Lee Brown, a tissue donation advocate and a guest speaker who we're so excited to hear from later today. And finally, our Hispanic Heritage Month graphics are coming soon. These graphics, as well as other DoNation campaign resources, are available in English and Spanish in the Outreach Materials Library. Accessibility is so important to us, as is cultural sensitivity. So if you feel like we're missing a resource or you'd like to see additional dual language materials, please email us at donation@akoyaonline.com. We do hope that you will download and share these resources with your fellow campaign partners and that you'll find inspiration as we approach the end of this campaign year. And speaking of the end of the campaign year, I'm going to hand things over to Bree Hennessy for a brief preview of DoNation's 2024 campaign recognition materials. There you go, Bree.
Thank you, Whitney. So the end of this campaign year is quickly approaching, but we have already started receiving some scorecards, and we are definitely looking forward to processing the rest and delivering your customized recognition certificates. So while the campaign year officially ends on September 30th, we do accept all of the scorecards on a rolling basis. So whenever your workplace wraps their campaign, feel free to submit those to us. All recognition certificates will be delivered to the organ donation organization person of contact who is listed on the scorecard, and that will happen within 30 days of us receiving your submission. When you do submit, please send those scorecards to donation@hrsa.gov. Our other recognition materials, including web badges, banners, and gifts, will go live in the Outreach Materials Library on October 1st. If you have any questions about the scorecard submission process, feel free to reach out to Marley, Whitney, or myself at any time. And we also have a scorecard submission simplified worksheet that reviews the process, which you can find right now in the Outreach Materials Library with the 2024 scorecard. All right, I will hand things back to Whitney, who is going to introduce our first guest speaker.
Thank you, Bree. Our first guest speaker today is Aisha Johnson, President of the Association for Multicultural Affairs in Transplantation. Welcome, Aisha. We're so excited to hear from you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm excited to be here, and AMAT is happy that we are able to share our organization about the need for multicultural education in our communities. Right, next slide. So why is AMAT important right now? We serve as the association that provides all of the education outreach for not only our professionals in organ donation and transplantation, but for the communities that our colleagues serve. So our mission is to support our partners, but we are also the thought leaders when it comes to multicultural outreach. And we have a large membership that are experts in what they do. So we make sure that we provide those resources for our partners across the United States. We also recognize that the need for transplantation is very high in our multicultural communities, with Black and Brown people waiting at the highest, waiting for a transplant. And we understand that kidney donation and transplant is very important. So as we work to increase organ donation and transplantation, we want to make sure that we provide the tools and resources for our partners so you can educate the communities if you do not have that knowledge, and that is what AMAT is here for. Next slide. So just a little history about AMAT. AMAT was started in 1992 by a small group of individuals that worked in an organ and transplant organization. They felt the need that they needed to get together and talk about the critical importance of what was happening in their organizations and how they can offer the support to increase transplantation in minority communities. Before we were AMAT, we were known as the American Society of Minority Health and Transplant Professionals. And in 2010, we changed our name to AMAT so we can focus on being the thought leaders for our organizations. Next slide. And just a little bit of historical collaborations through the years. One of our very first early collaborations was with Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. There was a lot of misinformation coming out of the Nation of Islam about organ donation and transplant, and a former president of AMAT made sure that she put out a press release and got a meeting with Farrakhan to talk about donation. And then he went back to talk about the facts about donation. So early on, AMAT was someone that people could lean on to talk about the importance of why organ donation and transplant is such a critical need for people of color. We make sure that we provide toolkits and webinars and resources for our partners. And then we also build up leaders and make sure that our coordinators on the ground, have the information that they need to do their jobs. And that is a resource that we do, but we also collaborate with our partners like HRSA. Next slide. So some of the key initiatives that we have done so far, we have a very strong relationship with our industry partners. I don't know if anyone was on the webinar we had yesterday with the Alliance and AOPO on the interreligious connections about donation and transplant. And we had over 800 people join that webinar yesterday. And so I have the mindset that when we work together, we are stronger. And so AMAT, we lean on our industry partners. We lean on the partnerships that we have so we could broaden our reach. We also actively partner with our volunteers, the staff at transplant centers, OPOs, tissue banks, and eye banks. So we're not just focused on organ, we're focused on eye and tissue and the transplant side. Next slide. And I want to just plug the membership growth and our benefits of AMAT over the last few years. We have a record-breaking number of 28 organizations joining us just alone in 2024. Some of the benefits that come with being a member of AMAT is that you have access to our webinars, our networking opportunities, our conferences, and then being part of our multicultural committees. We have the African American Committee, the Latino Committee, the Asian American and Pacific Islander, and our Native American committees. This year, we are now offering a committee for our family services and aftercare, so they can have those resources and best practices on what it means to approach diverse families, and then working on those best practices and sharing that among the other departments or committees that we have. We've always had a clinical development committee, and that committee is led by Woodley Ambrose and Vashawn Rogers. They are actually doing a lot of work on the back end to make sure that our community is knowing what's happening with first person authorization, what's happening with NRP. And if you attended the conference this year at AMAT, you'll hear more about that. And then we have our public relations and media committee that puts our toolkits and our media together. And then last year, we have our new committee from the LGBTQ plus that AJ Gardner out of CORE created. And that committee and work group is supporting our partners and our communities that need to know about what's important for them. Next slide. And just some future plans, and talk a little bit about our annual conference. AMAT just partnered with the Daisy Foundation. We will be having our first award for the AMAT Award that will highlight a nurse in a donor hospital or transplant center for all of the work they've done for transplantation. So that is a first for Daisy. And I'm really excited that we'll be presenting this to a special person in September. We, like I mentioned before, partner with the Alliance and AOPO. We also are partnering with AATB on webinars and some more meeting and events. And then just making sure that we are doing a lot of work with our industry leaders and our communities like HRSA to put the word out about what's important about donation. And then September is our 32nd annual conference in San Diego, California. Our theme is Empower, Engage, and Elevate, and it's focusing on providing tools in real time for our attendees. And next slide. All right, and to stay connected with AMAT, I've put our QR code on here. You can follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest news for us. Our website is amat1.org, and you can join AMAT if you would like to be part of the community. And just remember to connect with us on social media and look for more things to come. We'll have information to everyone. Thank you, Denise. Former membership chair for AMAT. I appreciate you very much for keeping the chat up to date. But again, thank you, HRSA, for allowing AMAT to be a part of this important webinar.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Your work and this presentation is such an important reminder of the need for donor diversity, and we really appreciate you. Up next, please welcome Brett Milam from Life Center Organ Donor Network. Thank you, Brett.
Hello, and just wanted to say real quickly, that was a great presentation by Aisha. And in fact, I was just going to shout out Audrey Holtzman, who's in our chat. She works a lot with Aisha through AMAT and does awesome work with us for Life Center. So hello, everyone. I'm Brett Milam, as Whitney said, and I'm the Communications Associate with Life Center Organ Donor Network. I'm happy to be here today representing Life Center and in place of my colleague, Julie Lubers, who was called into jury duty this week. So thank you for offering us this opportunity to share our connection with the HRSA donation campaign. So just a little bit about Life Center. We serve 2 million people across Greater Cincinnati, and we've been really fortunate to develop wonderful relationships with other organizations and businesses to move our life-saving mission forward. I think we've been particularly fortunate to develop strong partners within the community who can help us move our mission forward within diverse communities that we serve. It's these partnerships, like with La Mega radio station in Cincinnati, who help us to introduce the topic of organ donation and over time build trust. And so that's an audience that normally wouldn't have received the message of organ donation at all. So they would have just been stuck in that mistrust, distrust area. So today I'm going to be talking about that relationship with La Mega radio station and how they earned platinum status in the HRSA donation campaign in 2023. So admittedly, we already were deep into the year last year before we realized, hey, wait a second, we can give La Mega recognition for their partnership and all that they've done to help us. So in other words, Lamega was already acting as an organic partner with us, building the relationship. And then our strategy at Life Center through Julie was to look backward and see specifically what they accomplished according to the DoNation scorecard. So Lamega didn't even know they were on the precipice of being recognized, or that they would be recognized for the work that they were already doing throughout the year. So when we presented the DoNation Platinum Award to them, as you can see in this picture, it was before Christmas in December 2023. They were overjoyed to be recognized. And incidentally, when myself, Julie, and our newest colleague, Luis Santiago, interrupted their holiday party, they were more than happy to have the interruption and take a big group photo with us and with the award. I think the award meant a lot to them. And then they went and posted it on their Facebook, and just, again, they were really thrilled. But to back up again, Julie and I were talking about Lamega and the partnership and how this relationship was built over time and within the last 2 to 3 years. And there's not necessarily a magic process to building the relationship other than doing the slow, long-term work needed to cultivate it. But I will tell you, if there was a magic button to press, and I'm sure there's other OPOs listening, organ procurement organizations listening, I would say that magic button is to hire staff members at your organization who are diverse, not just people who look like the communities you serve, but also people who can engage with those communities on their level. So we're beyond fortunate to have Julie and now Luis on our team who speak Spanish and can engage with Lamega and their audience that Lamega reaches in a way myself or my other colleagues wouldn't be capable of. So like this picture right here is Avel and another radio personality at Lamega with Julie there in the middle. And Julie was at one of the Hispanic outreach community events that she does, and just happened to see Lamega and walked over there. And then Avel wanted to have her on the Facebook Live and shout out her and Life Center. So like he does little things like that that just keep moving the relationship forward. And it makes a difference, again, to have somebody that can speak Spanish, can go on Lamega and speak Spanish, can translate materials into Spanish. It just makes a huge difference. And specifically with Luis, who I don't have pictured here, he looks like the Hispanic community. So again, I think that makes a difference. And it just adds yet another layer of trust and authenticity to the relationship and for that audience. So Avel, the radio personality we most work with there on the left at Lamega, has been the driving force behind cultivating this relationship. The impetus from our end was to do exactly what this webinar is about, prioritizing diversity and organ donation outreach by reaching the Hispanic community who are underserved in our area and have distrust of the medical system, and specifically have issues with organ donation. There's all kinds of mistrust built into that. So from Avel's perspective, he was interested in a topic he didn't know much about initially, and then bringing that to the Lamega audience. Certainly as a radio station, their main objective is to play good music and highlight fun events in the community. But I think Avel also took seriously his role as providing important information for his listeners where he could, including about organ donation. So each month for the past 2 or so years, Avel has allowed Life Center about 22 minutes or so to talk about organ donation, which 22 minutes is a very long time in radio. So the fact that we get that spot every month is awesome. And he also does it as a Facebook Live. So it's not just a listening audio avenue. He also does a Facebook Live with Julie here. And so that goes out to Lamega's Facebook page, which reaches more than 65,000 people. And Facebook Live has been effective because on multiple occasions when Julie's been out in the community doing her Hispanic outreach, she's been recognized by people that know her from her Lamega interviews. And then when Avel posts those posts to Facebook Live, when he's doing the Facebook Live, they direct people back to our website, back to the Donate Life Ohio website. So again, that's just more connection being served there. And the conversations Avel and Julie have covered, they cover a wide range of organ donation topics, often highlighting the number of Hispanic individuals who are on the wait list or who have received a life-saving transplant. They also address those various myths associated with organ donation. And these monthly interviews also afford us the opportunity to shout out upcoming Life Center events we hope members of their audience will come out to. And then now we're at the point where Luis has a new hire, and now that he's comfortable and trained up, he does these interviews with us with Avel. And then through these monthly interviews with Lamega, I think Avel was surprised and interested to learn that Julie and myself are living kidney donors. So Avell took it upon himself to write this article you see about Julie and I for La Mega's monthly La Mega Nota newsletter, which reaches thousands of readers throughout Greater Cincinnati. This article also coincided with World Donor Day on February 14th, discussing living donors and how Life Center honors organ, eye, and tissue donors. So Avell, he didn't have to do this, but he took it upon himself because of that relationship he had with Life Center. It was just really awesome to see that. Me and Julie were really surprised when we saw that article. And then, so since we worked backwards with last year's donation scorecard, when we presented the award to La Mega, we showed them all the ways in which they can get points and participate going forward into 2024. So for instance, something new they're doing this year with us is participating in our 4th annual Live Healthy and Move Health and Wellness Fair in the city of Forest Park, which the city of Forest Park is another one of those underserved communities that has really low organ donation registration rates. And they also have a huge Hispanic community. So it's a natural fit to have La Mega come out there. So that's really exciting. And they're also just helping us get the word out to have more people come. So they did a Spanish speaking commercial spot with us. And that's really exciting. So in closing, I would say as a challenge at the end of the day, these partners still have a primary objective and motive when you think about it that has nothing to do with organ donation, and their audience or customers who are coming to them for that primary objective that again has nothing to do with organ donation. So the fact that La Mega makes time outside of their primary objective to give us a platform to talk about organ donation is incredible. But of course, again, it's still a challenge because their audience and customers, they just want to hear awesome music, for instance, instead of hearing necessarily about organ donation and after death decisions. But it's amazing that we can at least start planting those seeds. So I think the thing to remember with these partnerships to prioritize diversity is that they are long-term seed planting and cultivating. So like this article Avell did, that came a year or so after Julie first started going on La Mega. It wasn't like the first month after she was on La Mega, Avell was like, all right, let's do this article. That would be great. It took a while to kind of cultivate that and make that happen. So thank you again for having us and letting Life Center speak to you. I'm happy to take any questions you may have at the end.
Thank you so much, Brett. What great photos and a great story. So your all's unique approach to bringing these partners into donation is such a great model, and I know it's going to be so inspiring to our participating organizations. Next, please welcome Laura Lee Brown from MTF Biologics. Laura Lee is here to speak about tissue donation, and we're so excited to hear from her. Thank you, Laura Lee.
Great. Thank you for having me on here. Thank you. How much time do I have? 15, 20 minutes?
You've actually got quite a bit of time, Laura Lee.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, great. That sounds awesome. We probably won't do the videos, but we can run through the majority of slides. So I want to bring to your attention some of the ways that we can really resurrect tissue donation and bring it to life by elevating some of the voices of tissue transplant recipients to help bring donor awareness to our communities. And so next slide here, whenever you see my hand do this, next slide. I'm going to start off with Taria's story. Taria is Tahitian by birth, but she lives in Australia, and she's an ultra marathoner who happened to be doing an ultra marathon through some of the areas where she typically runs. And there was a burn fire there that really, they weren't anticipating it when she went out there to do the race, but she ended up having over 65% of her body burned. And skin donation that came from the United States reached Taria when Australia at that time did not have any skin, literally saved her life. At the time that the skin reached her, she was in multiple organ failure, was facing infections and hardships, and they literally gave her about 24 hours to die until that skin reached her. I like to start my presentations with stories like Taria's to show how donated skin can help save lives. It's one of the primary instances you can think about when you think about tissue donation saves lives. Next slide. Today, Taria is a mother. She has 2 children and lives a thriving life as a speaker, shares her story everywhere. I happened to travel with her about 3 weeks when she came to the United States to thank the Americans who helped save her life. And so our mission at NTF Biologics is really to save and heal lives. We don't just heal and save lives, we save and heal lives. And we're pretty bold about it, mainly because I think in the donation community, we tend to minimize the impact that tissue donation has on individual lives. And we talk about it in a way like health restoring or it heals, but we never talk about the life-saving impact of tissue donation. And that life-saving impact may really be psychological for some people, emotional. I can think of stories of recipients that I've interviewed that have said to me, hey, if it wasn't for this tissue graft, I wouldn't be able to go back to work again. You can only imagine the dark corners I lived in, thinking about how I'm going to earn a living, how I'm going to get back to loving what I do again. And because of tissue donation, I got my life back. And I want you to think about how we talk about tissue donation as I continue to talk about the topic through the upcoming slides. Next one, please. So tissue donation is really personal to me. It's a family affair. What you're looking at are photographs of myself and my cousins. That's my sister on the left. My sister is the newest tissue recipient in our family. She got bone grafts for periodontal procedures that she had last summer. Standing next to her is my cousin Mary, the first person that I know in my family that ever got cancer. She was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer and had to have a bilateral mastectomy. And with that came the opportunity for her to have breast reconstruction using donor skin grafts. That enabled her to get back to the classroom, to teach kids that she loved, and to feel confidently as a woman going back after having lost both breasts and you're 40, you're single. Her life changed as a result of that. And she was really grateful to her donor family. Wrote an amazing letter to them, thanking them for the gift of confidence and the gift of life they've given to her. That's her sister standing next to her. Her sister is a retired veteran. She served in the military for many years. While she was serving, she had cervical spine fusion where bone grafts were used to help fuse her spine. A couple of years ago, we typically do the New Jersey Sharing Donor Awareness Walk together because they live in the New Jersey area. And she showed up with some boots on, and she actually had foot surgery. Again, donor tissue was used in that. On the right, you'll see my photo there. I am a 3-time tissue recipient. Just like my sister, I've had periodontal surgery using bone grafts to help prepare for implants that were going to be placed in my mouth. And so you probably can relate to these stories. These are stories of everyday Americans, everyday people who are getting tissue transplants, but we don't talk about it in that way. We talk about surgeries and procedures, but not necessarily the impact that helps tie to donation. And on the next slide, you can see, this is just my immediate family. This is my sister on the left. My sister is actually a model. So you can imagine what that really meant to her, having a really confident smile to deal with all the photo shoots that she has and the appearances that she has to make. Having a dental implant using bone graft, it wouldn't have been possible without that. And she is forever grateful to have the ability to talk about the gift that she's received and share that with others. That's my mother with me. My mother actually got an entire mouth full of implants, and that was done using donor bone that really helped her. She was at the point where she was losing a lot of weight, just not being able to eat again. And because of the implants that she got in donor bone, enabled her to just really enjoy more family times together, enjoying joyful meals. Next slide, please. And so the question we have to ask is, why more storytelling? You can just kind of flip through the next couple really quickly. I have interviewed over 100 tissue recipients, and I typically ask a very standard set of questions when I speak with them about their experiences. The first thing I found out is the majority of the people I talk to, that number is actually higher. It's over 55%. They did not know that tissue could help their medical condition, meaning someone with arthritis didn't know that they could receive some sort of pain relief just by having a tissue graft placed where the arthritic area was. Breast reconstruction patients with breast cancer didn't know that skin could help them. Mothers with children with osteosarcoma who were thinking about, gee, do I save my kid's limb and use, do I amputate my kid's limb, or do I choose to have a limb salvage surgery to help my child have a normal life again? Most people just really don't know that tissue can help their condition. And so what it tells me is that we really need a lot of focused education, just talking about tissue more. We don't talk about it more, and we need to normalize conversations around that. The other thing I learned through interviewing, next slide, interviewing recipients is, oh, and here's a harsh reality. The majority of the work we do in the field of donation is tissue recoveries. They represent the majority of the work, tissue recoveries, tissue transplantation. But yet when we look at our platforms where we communicate with the public, stories and tissue content are very underrepresented on all of our content platforms. No matter where you go, you see fewer stories about that, but yet they represent the majority of work that's done. Next slide. Talking really fast here. So imagine if we could harness the power of the 2.5 life-changing stories and voices that are out there that aren't really even being told or heard by our public, because our public isn't even aware of the benefits of tissue donation or even what tissue donation means. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next couple of slides. But next, I think I'll skip this one because there's a whole lot of discussion that we won't have time to talk about with that one. But the next thing I learned is that there were 12% of all the recipients that I interviewed were never registered to become donors. Now, keep in mind, these are individuals who have written wonderful letters to donor families, thanking them for the gift of donation that helped them heal, but they had never, ever registered. And when I asked them why they hadn't registered, they said things like, oh, we didn't know it could help us. We didn't know what it was all about. We just don't know enough. Interestingly enough, 90% of those individuals were from multicultural communities. And I have to say that resonates with everything I've experienced throughout my entire career in donation, is that those communities are not necessarily informed, they're misinformed, they don't have access to information where they can learn about it. And the good thing is that all of those individuals, 100% of the ones I spoke to that hadn't registered, after the interviews and follow-up conversations, 100% of them registered to become donors, which tells you that it's really not that they're unwilling to donate, but there's just a lack of information out there that can help them make those decisions. Next slide, please. And so this is really the face of tissue donation. It's the face of multicultural tissue donations. They look like people that you and I know and interact with all the time. Next slide. And so the question is, like, where do these stories come from? Like, why is there such a deficit of tissue transplant stories? I'm going to pivot just a little bit to talk about Werkna. Here's Werkna. He's from California. He's a bone graft recipient for treatment of Olliers disease, where on the next slide, you'll see where he developed this condition called endochromatis, where you get these huge benign tumors on your hands. You can stay right there. He actually grew up in a small village in Ethiopia, where this disease is considered an outcast. As long as you have a physical deformity in that village in Ethiopia where he lived, he was considered an outcast. So his parents, knowing that, took him from hospital to hospital, trying to get help for their child. And finally, they did really the best thing they could do. They put him in an orphanage where kids like him really go to live for the rest of their lives, because they would never be accepted in their communities, facing death, danger, you name it. That's what's at risk for them. This orphanage happens to work with American physicians who typically come by and see how they can help these kids. And one of the surgeons that we work with very closely, Dr. David Culber out of California, they started bringing Werkna to LA to get treatments every single year to work in his hands. You can see the photo at the bottom where he's got the huge tumors. You can barely see his hands, his fingers. This is just a couple of surgeries later where you can see an improvement. And on the next slide, you can see miraculously, look at these hands. He can actually do things with his hands. He can eat with chopsticks. He can type, he can text. He texts me all the time, so I know he can do all these things. But today he's thriving. He's a college graduate. He speaks English. On the next slide, you see a more modern picture of him. And he is really grateful for the gift of tissue donation that really gave him a new life in the United States. When I asked him, do you think it's ever possible for you to go back home and with your new hands and be a part of your community again? He said, no, the scars are still there. I would still not be accepted in my own community, which is really sad to hear, but that's his experience. But he is so grateful to have received the gift of tissue donation that has helped him get so far. Next slide here. So where do these tissue stories come from? The majority of tissue stories that we get come from our donor correspondence programs. We call it Linking Lives. That's where a recipient on the next page can write a letter to their donor family. Next slide, please. And from these recipients who are sharing their stories with donor families, we reach out to them and ask them if they would share their stories so that we can create video stories and collateral materials that tell the story of tissue transplantation. Next slide, please. Another problem we encounter is this whole nomenclature that we've created where we have the language of organ donation and tissue donation. And I have to tell you, like, most of us who've gone through formal education in the United States, we have learned that a bone is an organ and the skin is an organ, corneas are organs, veins are organs. And then the donation community approaches us and they're talking about tissue donation. And now we have to re-educate the public on what that really means, that we're not talking about a heart or a liver or a lung. We're talking about bone, ligaments, skin, corneas. And we have to do that, right? Because if we don't, they have no idea what we're talking about. And so on the next couple of slides, this is really something important that we need to keep doing. We need to keep educating the public on what we mean by tissue donation, talk about the impact in terms of the number of individuals that are helped and whose lives are saved and healed every single year, that one donor, the next one, can help up to 75 people, and the different types of tissue and how they're used, that skin, bone, ligament are used in these various ways, and how placenta is used to bring healing to others, to wounds, and how bone grafts can help save kids' arms and legs, and how fractures and people who just want to flash a beautiful smile can receive dental implants using bone grafts. All of these, we need to talk about them often and not minimize them, so that we can get the messages out to others who need to find a reason to check that box and say yes to donation. Next slide, please. And so on our website, we have over 100 stories. On any given day, there are about 30 to 50, I don't know, there are probably more than that, observances that exist. You can find a way to talk about these stories in so many ways that connect to individuals. Rare Disease Day, World Diabetes Day, Single Parent Day. Almost all these recipients have some connection to an observance that you can use to talk about that. On the next slide. You can just scroll through this one, the next one. Lots of animations here. Next slide. And so one of the things I put together every year is a social calendar for a minimum of 4 stories that we want to share on social media every month. You can imagine with over 100 stories, we never have to tell another story twice. But this is kind of like what our October calendar looks like. We'll be sharing a couple of these stories. This is actually one I did for a couple of years ago, but we do share more in October because of Raw Day, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that observance. But we have enough stories to be able to create a calendar for an entire year, and I'm happy to share those with any of you who wish to have a sample of what a year sharing tissue transplant stories could look like. Next slide, please. Oftentimes, I think we become our worst enemies, and I hear it all the time. I get calls all the time with people saying, hey, I'm looking for some tissue transplant stories, but you know what? This story isn't big enough. Like, we need an attention grabber, an athlete, a celebrity to tell that story. And my response to that is that you don't need anyone big enough to tell that story. You can use the stories of average Americans who are anyone who decides to walk into an operating suite to have a surgical procedure using a donor graft to help with a medical condition. That's a big story in itself, because for that recipient, it's a really important story. They're looking for a way to be alleviated of the symptoms that they're having. I oftentimes hear people say, we're only looking for local stories. And certainly that makes a lot of sense. When you have a speaker, you need a local person to come and physically be there. But when you're dealing with a deficit of stories, your audience doesn't really care where these stories come from. And if that's limiting you from sharing more stories, share whatever you have. I hear people tell me, we've already featured that story a year ago. We don't want to repeat stories, but not everyone is on social media every day, every hour, like we may be who work in communications. We're always focused on what engaging stories. And I repeat stories all the time, several times a year. Oftentimes when I talk to recipients, I ask them for photos, they'll send me 10, 15, sometimes 30. And so we use a variety of photos to feature the same stories and just give it a different look and appearance, so it doesn't look like it's the same story if that is a concern. But try and avoid these barriers and embrace the idea of telling tissue transplant stories, because you have more of these to tell. They're new stories, people haven't heard them before. And it gets people thinking about, my neighbor next door. A tissue recipient could be my father, my mother, or someone very close to me. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about how we embrace storytelling by sharing resources, but we do have a resource that we share with the public on our website. But if you want a more concise, let's go to the next slide so I can show what our repository looks like. These videos, it's 5 minutes long. Let's skip that one. But we have a tissue repository where we keep all the information that we have on tissue story that really makes it easy to access. It's basically in our SharePoint. We have the stories categorized by state, your donation service area, the type of tissue, any type of connection that the story may have to something you may want to feature. We have it. You can filter by maybe the type of assets that are available. Maybe you're just looking for a story flyer or a slide. Maybe you have a video. So I'm happy to share a spreadsheet of that if you guys are interested in seeing what that could look like if you were looking for stories. And hopefully that will help you see how you can, organize the work that you're doing around tissue storytelling. But if you're looking for resources and would love to share our stories, we would happily share that with you so that you can share it with your audiences. Next one. And so one of the things that we do is we pay a lot of attention to educating kids and youth about tissue donation, tissue transplantation. This is Alyssa, received a skin graft recipient. She is from Texas, had a traumatic wound injury. Next slide. She's a big sister. She has 4 younger sisters, 3 younger siblings, loves to help out around the house. She's at school. She loves to get involved with basketball. She's on the team there, but she loves her farm animals, takes them to the Texas Rodeo every year to showcase them, is involved with the Texas State Fair. But while she was helping Dad one day out in the backyard to move his 1,500-pound welding machine, that machine fell on her foot. And lucky for her, there was a 2x4 that was right on top of her foot that kept that welding machine from decimating her foot. She would have lost her foot if that machine had fallen on her. So her parents kind of looked at the wound. It was basically just some bruising, some scratches, a little pink. They took her to the urgent care center. It didn't look really bad. They just gave her some sort of topical antibiotics, sent her home. 3 days later, her mom's looking at her foot and her foot's turning colors. It's turning purple and it's warm to touch. It looks like it's infected. I saved you from all the gross photos that I have, and I'll show you some that I think you can appreciate on the next slide. Here's a picture of, on the left, where you can see a skin graft was placed after they had gone in and sort of cleaned out that wound, debrided that wound, and they needed to put something in there just to kind of help it heal a little bit and close. And so what you're looking at is a skin graft that's placed over the injury. And on the right, I mean, pretty amazing. That wound has closed. It's not, she plays basketball. I mean, it's functional. She can get out there. She can play basketball. She can help her mom around the house and be the thriving child that she once was before she had the accident. Go back to the next slide. I'm sorry. And here's what her mom said. Her mom was one, when I spoke to her, said, I'm not a registered donor. I never even thought about it. But if anybody would need my help, I would want to help them just like someone helped my daughter. The next thing she did after we had the conversation was register to become an organ donor. Next slide. We also have lots of stories that I can share with you, educating kids about bone transplants and women who have gone through breast cancer, and their kids are really part of that whole experience. There's another one where the mother gets breast cancer, the kids are helping mom pick out a wig. And then once mom gets breast reconstruction using donor tissue, they were able to sit down and help mom write a letter to their donor family. Lots of really great resources we can use. On the next one, you'll see one that one of my interns worked on. She came to work with us a couple of years ago. At that time, she shared with me that she was not a registered donor. And when I asked her, what kept you from saying yes to donation? She said, you know, when I went to the DMV, they asked me that question. I really wasn't expecting it. I really just wanted to go there to get my license. It was a happy occasion for me. And here they are asking me about donation. And she said, I said no, because the way they asked made me think like, maybe I shouldn't do this. And so, you know, today she's a registered donor, but I asked her, can you think of a project that you can work on just to help educate the youth who might have been going through the same experiences you were going through, to sort of help them with that? And this is what she and her sister put together. Her sister's a cartoon artist, and they put together this piece where a father is taking his daughter to the DMV to get their license, and then he's going through the check boxes. Do you have this? Do you have this? And by the way, they're going to ask you about organ donation. Here's my donor. Here's my license with the big heart on it. It means that I'm signed off to be a donor. And so this is a piece we share every September around DMV Awareness Month, just to sort of educate the youth about you know, thinking about that question that may be coming up when you get to the donor registries. I'm going to go through the next ones really, really fast. I think you get some of the ideas that I'm talking about, how you can tell that story through, how you can raise donor awareness through storytelling of tissues. Next one, next slide. Oh, okay. That's all the time we have. I think that's it. I have about 10 more slides, but I think you'll get to see that when presentations are shared.
Yes, we will definitely be making the slides available. I think we may have lost Marley somehow, who was sharing.
Okay, that's what happened. I wondered.
Yes. Let me see. Yes, I think we did. Well, we will see if she pops back on and can pull those back up. But in the meantime, I believe we are going to have
Hi.
some. Oh, do we get it?
Yes, I am so sorry. My internet went out. I'm so sorry, everyone. Allow me to reshare. Oh, and I'm no longer host, so I cannot share my screen. And Whitney or can you make me a co-host?
Bree, can you do that for Marley?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Awesome. And as soon as that comes back, we are very excited to see more from Laura Lee. So sorry about that. Thank you all.
Bree, I think if you open up the participants and you go by my name, you might be able to assign me permissions that way. Everyone, thank you. Okay, I think we're back. Give me just a second to pull up our presentation again. Okay. All right, we seeing that okay?
Yeah. And the next
Okay.
few are pretty quick. Let's go to the slide on tissue donation, helping women with breast cancer. We're just going to scroll through that.
Oop, I went a little too far. Here we go.
You know, the month of October is really a great time to be talking about tissue donation. 1 in 8 women are affected by breast cancer. And while women are thinking about this and the public is thinking about breast cancer, it's a huge opportunity for our professionals in our field to really be talking about how donor tissue can help women. There's a video story in there. You can take a look at it, but on our website, we have more of these stories. I do have a page full of resources from last year. Next 2 slides, where you can hop on to last year's Broad Day page. We actually devoted an entire website to this. There are over 30 stories of women that you can share with your audiences. There are flyers of their stories. Lots of great resources there. Our new page will go up in about 30 days, so you'll see our new materials for 2024. But the one thing I want to talk about the next 2 slides is that representation really, really matters. Here you'll see on the next slide, Jessica Dominguez from Utah. She got rhinoplasty, not for aesthetic purposes, but really because she could not breathe, couldn't smell food. She was taking lots of medications for allergies that kept her tired all the time. She had no energy. And it wasn't until she had a rhinoplasty done with costal cartilage that she felt like she was alive again. She could finally gain weight and eat and enjoy foods that she could no longer smell. Representation really, really matters. 2 years ago, so let's take a look at the next slide. You can see some of the images of, next one. Some of the images, stories we have on our website that you're welcome to share, these stories of Hispanic, Latino individuals receiving tissue transplants. On the next one, you'll see lots of African-American stories of people of African descent receiving tissue transplants, lots that you can share with your audiences this month. And we have a couple of API stories. Those are really hard to get, but we are mining intentionally for all of these stories so we have a better representation of what transplantation looks like, because people need to see themselves as receiving the gift of transplantation to really feel like they, can participate fully. And this is just one of the ways you do it. You make sure you're always showing the faces of people of color, multicultural communities that are participating in that. The next slide. But even more so, at our events, we need to make sure that we're embracing tissue recipients at our organizations. These are two of our employees. Several years ago, they went to the San Diego transplant games, and they were 2 of 13 out of the thousands of recipients that are out there competing and enjoying the transplant games. There were only 13 tissue recipients there. We need to do better. We need to make sure that transplantation is represented across the board, and just about everything we do, especially with the most common type of transplants out there. And on the next slide, I'm going to conclude with just an appeal to talk more about tissue donation, elevate the conversations where you are, talk about how it saves lives and heals lives, challenge your organization to share more stories and more content, and start maximizing the resources that are available to you. Here's really what compels me to do this job that I do with such passion. On the next slide, this is a recipient, Sally. She's from New Jersey. Sally has never, ever received a thank you letter from any of the recipients or met any of them. In fact, most tissue recipients have a 0.5% of ever hearing from most tissue donor families have a 0.5% chance of ever hearing from one of their recipients. And when I was an organ coordinator decades ago, I remember sitting in rooms with families, asking them to donate their loved ones' organs. And what we would tell them is that their loved ones would leave legacies behind. And what Sally said to me is that, every time I read stories about these recipients, I get to see what my John was able to do through all of the people that benefited. And that is really the legacy of donor families that they leave behind, the stories of lives that are changed, the stories of, families that are uplifted and communities that are transformed forever because you have people getting back to their lives again. So I would encourage you, on behalf of donor families who really don't get to choose what kind of donor their loved one gets to be, right? They had no choice in that. Let's elevate these recipients that are their legacies, and let's start telling their stories so that we can get more people passionate about donation and register to save more lives. Thank you so much.
Whitney, are you there?
Yes, thank you. Yes, we have a few moments. If you all have any questions for our speakers in the chat, we will all be monitoring that. So we have a few moments for that. Thank you all so much. It was amazing to hear from you all. And we do have a couple minutes, really, really quick, if we have any time for questions before Lauren sends us off.
It does look like we have one question in the chat for Laura Lee. Are any of the MTF printable resources able to be edited?
Yes, we are happy to share any of these resources with anyone who wants to use it. I just got through adding logos for another one of the OPOs that I work with who just wanted to share them with their community. You're welcome to use any of it, anything that's on our website, you're welcome to use. The only thing that I ask is if you're going to share something on social media, be sure to hashtag us, because I reach out to those recipients to let them know that their story's featured. And they, in turn, love sharing it with their audiences, and you just get a better engagement and reach through that.
And then we have another request, Laura Lee, if you would be willing to share your contact information.
I think it's on the very last slide, so you'll have a copy of the slides. Yes, happy to hear from someone. Yeah. I felt like I just talked 100 miles a minute. Never talked that fast in my life.
It was wonderful. I'm
It was
so
great.
sorry to have
Thank you
caused
so
a
much.
disruption to the presentation. It was fantastic.
Yes. Thank you all so much. Lauren, did you have any final parting remarks or recommendations for anyone?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining again. Thank you to our speakers for your very informative presentations. I hope everyone attending found them very valuable and will find some way to incorporate them in your own outreach efforts going forward. My last remark is please mark your calendars. We are hosting another National Minority Donor Awareness Month webinar. The Health Systems Bureau, along with HRSA's Office of Intergovernmental and External Affairs. That's going to be held on Tuesday, August 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So look for an invitation via eBlast to that webinar coming toward you soon. Hope you'll be able to join us for that. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Lauren. We will be in touch with the links, and we hope you all are excited to read the next issue of Digging into DoNation, where you will also hear more from Laura Lee and a recap of all the great presenters we heard from today. So Aisha, Brett, Laura Lee, thank you so much for sharing. We welcome your feedback as always, and I'm so excited to join all of you and look forward to more of these. So we hope you all have a great week, and thank you so much for supporting DoNation and HRSA. Thank you.
Thanks all.